So in this session, we're going to look at some of the aspects we've covered in previous modules in terms of the organizational build, in terms of the people you require in your organization, the processes you need to design and implement, and also the technology that will help you execute those processes and bring really sort of all of those aspects together in terms of how do you build a transformational map that will take your quality organization and your quality system from its current state to obviously a future position in terms of where you want it to be. Now, this is all about strategy. So basically, strategy is all about shaping events to influence the future. And this is a great book by Matt McKone in terms of the strategy book. It gives many aspects of strategy and many tools within the book in terms of how you implement strategy. And one of the things he said is skilled strategists accept the world is complex, and we talked about complexity, and figure out ways that they can shape the world and shape events to meet their needs. And very often reacting is as important as planning. So obviously there needs to be a mixture of in terms of events that you plan and you basically lay the ground for a future position, but also there's an element of reacting to events as they come along. And essentially strategy is all about making decisions, how you make the best decisions, how you make risk-based decisions, and how you make decisions for the overall benefit of your customers and your end users of your products. Now, most strategy involves a degree of change, and change in this context is really change to your quality organization and quality system to really position it in a better place to deliver on the expectations of your customers. And this change will not always actually be embraced. There will be a degree of resistance to change, as we'll explore in this module, you need to understand the organization in terms of what types of resistance you're going to encounter. Very often, resistance is actually linked to a perceived threat to the power or position of individuals, and we'll explore this a little more in this session. But really, it's all about winning hearts and minds in terms of positioning your quality system to better deliver to your customers. So really, this is really an exercising moving the organization forward to better understand why you're making changes to the quality system and the importance of doing so. Now, in many respects, planning, executing, and maintaining a quality transformation is really an exercise in answering the following questions. Why are you doing it? What are you going to do, and when are you going to do it? And essentially, how are you going to actually execute this transformational activity? And in the following slides, we'll explore each of these questions in turn. So the why are you doing it? In essence, you need to address head on really the concept and often quoted, and we covered it in previous sessions, this concept of culture of quality. And individuals and yourself need to understand why quality is important and what they can do about it. And so in terms of, unless you have the foundations of an individual's understanding of why quality is important within the organization, a lot of this transformational activity we'll cover in the following slides is very, very difficult. So really, you have to really lay the foundation in terms of really positioning the organization to understand why making changes to the QMS and the quality organization is important, why it impacts the customers, and the importance of investing in quality and investing in the QMS and the quality organization itself. Now, the concept of cultural quality has been explored in many articles, and there are many different dimensions to it, and various authors have described it in various ways. But essentially, we feel there are actually three areas that are really critically important to actually embedding a cultural quality within an organization. One is executive champions, one is an empowered and engaged employees, and the other one is really a culture that it sort of embraces learning. So we'll step through these in the following slides. And the first one really is around executive champions and the importance of them. Now, executive champions play a crucial role within your business. Now, leadership needs to be seen to embrace quality, be very visible about it, and this really needs to be felt across the entire organization. And really, it should be aligned to the core purpose of your organization in terms of your delivery to your customers in terms of the products and services you make. So practical examples of demonstrating the importance of quality of the organization that the executive champions can actually foster is one example would be making sure that the quality policy is on display. It should be simple enough for employees to remember the key messages, and it should also be clear that what are the individual's obligations they need to actually perform to actually sort of execute them, and basically it should be clear that those obligations are actually expected of all employees. Another way of actually demonstrating the importance of quality is at executive meetings. Quality should be one of the first topics to be discussed, and it really shouldn't be relegated to the end of the meeting as an afterthought. And really, if employees see quality as discussed front and centre at the executive level, then they will be more likely to position themselves in terms of the importance of quality within their daily lives. And also, one another great example is that very often organisations have company town halls, and every quarter or maybe sort of twice a year, the organisation gets together, and it's really important that really quality is discussed front and centre in terms of its importance. It's very important that the chief executive actually articulates the importance of quality, and it really the leadership really needs to be seen to be taking a lead in discussing its importance with the business. So really, the executive champions have a really foundational role to play in terms of ensuring that there is a culture of quality, and quality is discussed throughout your business and your organization. And to foster an organization that's got a really deeply embedded culture of quality, you really need evidence of empowered and engaged employees. So employees need to feel they can make a change and are actually motivated enough to do so. And really, if leadership wants a culture of quality, there needs to be an environment where employees can actually raise their hands when they've got quality concerns. So basically, there are lots of examples of organisations which talk about a no blame culture, but very often that's easier to actually, it's harder to actually implement than say. But it can be done. But really, you do need to foster an environment where people are very comfortable raising their hands and saying, this is an issue related to quality. I think we should need to do something about it. And there's an open dialogue between employees and the leadership in terms of their ability to make change and improve quality. And related to this, you need a learning culture. So having a very vocal executive champion and talking about empowerment, will really result in very little unless there is an expectation that improvement is expected within. There's a continuous improvement and a learning culture within the business. And this really needs to be an expectation across the whole of the business. And there's an expectation that the organisation and the individuals learn and grow through this journey. So that covers the why. In the next section, we're going to step through some of the what and when, the mechanics of a quality transformation. So in this slide are some of the things that feed into a quality transformation. We'll talk about feedback. We'll talk about talent and organisation. We'll talk about a gap analysis in terms of the quality system, in terms of where it is versus where it should be or where it needs to be in the future. We'll talk a little bit about information technology, and then we'll sort of bring it together in terms of constructing what is called a transformational map, a T map, and how to do that. And really, all of these things roll up in terms of this concept of moving your quality organization transformationally to a position where it can meet the requirements not just of today, but obviously in future years in terms of the challenges ahead. So feedback, you're really going to have to get feedback from the organization in terms of their views of the QMS, their views of quality, their views of your products, their views of the processes they have to follow within the quality system. And really, ideally, you need to interview at least 10% of the total workforce, or at least 50 people, really making sure you cover all of the major business or the major functions within your business. And even those you rarely interact with in terms of your quality organization. So marketing, sales, finance, you need to be quite broad in terms of reaching out across the organization and getting feedback. And it does help if you structure your interview along these lines in terms of asking the individuals, what's working with the quality organization or the quality system, what's working currently, what do you feel is not working, and also what do you feel is missing and holding you back in terms of your ability to execute your daily tasks and your daily jobs. So really, you're trying to get feedback from the whole of the organization, and quite rich feedback. And in general, this feedback should be solicited through one-to-one interviews. You can do surveys, but really there is real power in actually sitting down with individuals and having open and candid conversations in terms of what do they feel in terms of warts and all are issues around the quality system and the quality organisation. So brace yourself for some very often negative or critical feedback, but really it's hypercritical that you actually know the current state of feeling in terms of how individuals feel about your quality organisation and the quality system. Now, you'll be given a lot of information in these feedback sessions, and some of it will be contradictory. So it's really important just to basically hear, check facts before coming to any major conclusions. And there is a critical decision point in the process, and there's a sort of a no-go point for your transformation where you've got to decide on the analysis which direction you go in terms of taking that feedback and deciding what are the areas you need to look at and explore even further. And be aware that as your position as a leader within the business, your leader within a quality organization, very often individuals will tell you things they think you want to hear. This is especially the case if they report up into you. So don't be scared to keep asking them in terms of why is that? Why is that? So really be aware that individuals very often don't tell the truth, especially when they're within your own function in terms of giving you the truth. But it is really important that you do sort of unearth the truth and individuals' real feelings about the quality organisation and the quality system that you're responsible for. Now, from this feedback session, you get a sense of whether the quality organisation and the QMS is supporting the business. However, the more sensitive issue is not just whether the quality organisation and as a structural organisation is helping the business, or the QMS in terms of the mechanics are helping the business. You can have to stray into areas where you're actually going to have an open discussion where our individual members of staff delivering in terms of who's contributing to your quality organisation very well, who's struggling or not being able to contribute very well, and why they're not doing so. And are there any aspects of your quality organisation in terms of skill sets and sort of qualifications or such like which you're missing from your quality organisation? Now, obviously, you need to have great care in sort of reaching out for this feedback, but really what you're trying to really sort of uncover is what changes do you need to make to your quality organisation, even at the individual level, in terms of making sure that they've got the right skill sets, they've got the right number of individuals, and the kind of individuals that are going to move your business and your organisation forward. So in terms of looking at your quality organisation, whether you've got the right individuals in terms of the right behaviours and skill sets within your business to support your quality organisation, and you may have individuals that are better placed to work outside of your quality organisation. One of the things you're going to have to approach is in terms of how is your quality organisation aligned to meet the broader needs of the business. Now, one very powerful approach is to actually start aligning physically your sub teams within your quality organisation to more directly and more effectively support your key business partners. So all the variants of the quality organization, you can have quality operations, design quality, supply quality, quality systems, commercial, complaint handling. One of the things you can do is actually start partnering and making the connection between those sub teams with their key business partners, even down to actually physically locating those sub teams very close to where those key business partners are working. This obviously is a bit of a cultural shift for the organization. If you're going to move a quality organization from a position where it resides in one locality and then basically spread it across the organization where it's more dispersed. But this really is very, very effective if you start to do this, and you can cross this bridge, and individuals can feel comfortable with that, because what you're trying to do then is actually make your quality organization best placed to understand the needs of your business partners and actually act on those needs and support those business partners' needs on a daily basis. And very often that's very, very difficult if the quality organization is far away from those key business partners, or actually in another country or another site completely. And really, this model really is actually sometimes a paradigm shift for some organisations in terms of how the quality organisation looks. And what you're essentially doing here is you're making the quality organisation very much a virtual department, a virtual organisation. It's ultimately, basically, the quality organisation has no physical location. Its entity is actually spread across the different business units it supports. But this is a very, very effective way of actually of enhancing the interaction between your stakeholders you're supporting, and it helps in terms of understanding their needs, and also sort of your ability to coach and train and mentor those parts of the organisation that you're supporting. Now we'll come on to the development of the team app in terms of lots and lots of executing one. But one of the important things is it's very important that you actually have generally your organisational design set in place before you start your team app. So basically, you've got the right people on the bus. Basically. The incorrect people are basically not on the bus, and basically you've got the right individuals sitting in the right seats on the bus. So what you don't want to do is go through a team app exercise halfway through an organisational design, and then there's Now we'll come on to the development of the team app in terms of nuts and bolts of executing one. But one of the important thing is it's very important that you actually have generally your organisational design set in place before you start your team app. So basically, you've got the right people on the bus. Basically. The incorrect people are basically not on the bus, and basically you've got the right individuals where you're sitting in the right seats on the bus. So what you don't want to do is go through a team app exercise halfway through an organisational design, and then there's. So in terms of your organizational design, it's really important that you actually have generally your organizational design set before you move on to the stage where you start building your team app, your transformational map. One of the reasons for that is if you're going to change your organization mid through a team app session, it will very much implement disrupt the implementation in terms of your ability to execute the implementation. So really, at the very beginning, before you go on to the team app, you need to have the right individuals on the bus, the right individuals off the bus, and generally the right individuals sitting in the right seats on the bus. So basically, your organisation needs to be sort of really sort of not set in stone, but it needs to be fairly mature in terms of if you've got the right individuals, you've got the right skill sets, and you've got the right sort of behaviours across your organisation before you move on to the team app in terms of building that and obviously executing that. You will need to make changes fairly quickly and comprehensively, and there will be a degree of short-term pain in terms of actually some individuals you may have to move around in terms of positions where they may be better placed in other positions, but really you're going to have to work your way through this short-term organisational design pain for really a sort of a longer-term gain in terms of the ability of your organisation to actually meet the needs of the business going forwards. So we talked about making changes to individuals and your organisation. The next stage really is looking at your quality system in terms of what are the gaps in terms of its ability to meet current standards and regulations, and obviously regulations and standards that will come down the line in years to come that can be expected. And despite all of the changes we discussed within these modules in terms of organisation and technology and process and et cetera, and efficiency and lean, one vital and obvious point to make is that despite all the content in the book and in the training modules, your quality system must at all times be compliant. So basically, even though your position in the QMS in different aspects to deliver to your customers, it still must be fully compliant throughout this journey. And this stage of building the transformation map is really to understand, how compliant your system is currently. Are there any gaps in terms of current compliance and obviously future compliance? So the next stage is really go into a bit more detail in terms of where are your gaps in your quality system in terms of meeting current and future regulations, and really in a very similar approach to that we did with the risk management in the risk management session, is you look at the gaps in terms of what are the criticality of the gaps in terms of what's the impact of that. So you could have a gap that's very insignificant and you can score low, and then basically you have some form of gradation which moves up to the sort of maximum band. Critical gap could potentially generate a warning letter for the FDA or have some really great impact in terms of regulatory inspection. That would obviously be given the maximum score. And this stage is really quite painful. You're going to have to go through each aspect of the quality system in terms of each of the elements, and then look at it through the eyes of the various regulations, be they the standards 13485 for medical devices, or IVDR, or external audit, or internal audit, or any aspect or regulation or standard that is applicable to your business. I really score each of these QMS elements in terms of what are the gaps in order to sort of get a sort of a risk matrix of the whole of your quality system in terms of what are the compliance gaps and what are the compliance risks you've got. And as I said, this is very painful but very important because, as I said, you need to identify those gaps very, very quickly, and obviously critical gaps you need to do some remediation, mitigation very quickly and properly as well. So the next important area is information technology. Now, the role of information technology is now central to the management of quality in most businesses. There are a whole range of off-the-shelf eQMS systems you can use that will give you best practice from day one in terms of executing your quality system. Now, one thing to be wary of is actually if you've got a poor culture of quality within your organization, implementing an IT solution will not necessarily change that. You'll basically be stuck with the same environment, the same cultural environment. You just have a different IT solution. So basically, you may not necessarily change your culture of quality by just an application of technology. But if you do roll out technological solutions, you do need to actually involve the end users of those solutions during the planning and deployment of the exercise. It's very important that you actually get those individuals part of the journey in terms of your IT roadmap. But one thing, the final thing to be aware is that don't let your quality transformation become confused with an IT deployment exercise. IT will often fully support you in the rollout of such applications, but your quality transformation goes beyond just the application of technology to move your business forward. So before we go on to the execution of how you build a transformation map, the final area to look at is how are you going to do it? How are you going to move the quality organization forward in terms of building this roadmap and actually living and breathing in terms of its ability to move your quality environment forward and your culture of quality forward and your quality organization forward. And really, it's all about the how. It's all about the goals and objectives you give individuals, the sort of training and support you give individuals, and also how you reward and recognize individuals within your business. Now, you're going to have to work with the business to find appropriate goals, both at the leadership level and also down through the organization, where if you complete those goals, you'll actually move your business forward and move your transformation in the right direction. So, as part of the transformational map, there'll be various stages as you move forward, and you've got to give the organization some signposts and sort of stage gates as you move down along your transformational map. And your role as a leader is not necessarily to develop and implement or even identify the solutions that will form part of your quality roadmap. Your job really is to set the goals and give the organization the appropriate tools and training to solve those problems themselves. So basically, your job is to set the expectations and give the organization the tools and the ability to move forward, not necessarily deliver it for the organization. But it's very important that you do set expectations as you roll out your roadmap. That really cascade down to individual goals and objectives that individuals have on the sort of their goal sheets that actually will roll up into the delivery of your overall team app. So we touched on training and support in one of the previous sessions, and training can take many forms. And the way you behave as a leader and the things you will tolerate and the things you will not tolerate are also a form of training within the organisation. So be very cognizant that the things that you will accept as a lead business leader are giving very powerful signals across the organisation of what you feel is right, and obviously the things you won't accept are obviously sending likewise signals. And really, training defines a consistent set of behaviours across a population. And once you've got this consistent set of behaviours, really you've got the foundation of an element we talked of in terms of culture. And the area of culture we're really interested in is obviously the culture of quality. So therefore, training is fundamental in creating a culture you want to establish. And in practice, it means significant, dedicated and focused effort over a number of years to not only build the culture, but also make sure that it remains in place and it grows and it's established for years to come. And as you move your organisation forward, along your roadmap, at the various stage gates you will define, you've really got to reward and recognise individuals in terms of the delivery on your roadmap. So give individuals appropriate goals and training will only do so much. You've actually got to make sure that people are actually recognised in terms of their contribution to executing your roadmap and also building your roadmap. And you as a leader need to recognise and reward achievements and really continue and encourage the organisation on this journey. And it will be a journey that will have some bumps in the road. There'll be some failures, there'll be successes, but basically you need to actually think of ways that you can actually encourage your organisation to really bear with it in terms of their contribution to your team app and its ongoing execution. So the next section really covers the building a transformational map, and the TMAP really is a very simple tool, graphic tool, to sort of explain to the organisation what your sort of journey over the next 3 to 5 years is in terms of your quality organisation, your quality system. And very often it's a one page graphic, and basically it sort of signposts the things you're going to do in the short term and the medium term and the longer term. And one very powerful use of it is a communication tool. It basically shows to the organisation where you're going in the future, what the direction your quality organisation is going to be taken and your QMS, but also it can also be used to sort of the organisation to reflect on in terms of how far you've progressed along that journey in terms of improving your quality organisation and your quality system. So, what are the mechanics of building a TMAP? So, the first thing you need is somebody to facilitate the meeting. You'll also need representatives of your business across the business. You don't want the meeting to be too big, so basically you need enough individuals that every function has got a voice, but you don't want too many individuals that the session becomes a bit unmanageable. You'll obviously need a venue for that meeting to occur, and obviously you need lots of wall space and an environment you can put all your ideas on in terms of mapping out what the potential journey forward is. You can also do this. You can do the sessions as a one-off, but very often you can do it as multiple sessions and then roll these up into one larger session. And very often it helps if you get individuals as part of this exercise that weren't part of the initial feedback session we talked about earlier in terms of their feedback. So you get a bit sort of a broader selection of staff to ensure that everybody has their voice in terms of feedback of their views on the quality organisation and the quality system. So this is the process flow for building a TMAP, and we'll step through in a minute in terms of there's introductions. You basically define the current state. You try to look at themes that you can group sort of areas of concern around or areas for improvement. You start to define what the organisation feels the future state should look like, and then you start really sort of getting into sort of details of how your TMAP will look. And then once you have your TMAP, there's really an element of how you maintain it and move it forward. So the first part of the session is really introductions, and it's usually about half an hour. Basically, the facilitator will cover the purpose of the meeting and talk about ground rules, etc., and all the aspects of brainstorming. So this is really a get to know everybody session in terms of making sure everybody's aware of why you're doing it and what their role is within this session. So the next stage really is really defining the current state, and that takes probably a half an hour to an hour. And really, what we're trying to do is define the current state, and you're trying to answer the questions. What it's like to use the quality management system, what's the quality organisation, in terms of their feelings about the quality organisation. And again, it's back to those three questions: what do they feel is working, what's not working, what are the aspects of the QMS or the quality organisation that's actually missing. So really, you're trying to get the here and nows of your organisation and QMS. Operating now in terms of what's working and what isn't. And then based on that feedback, we basically you're trying to sort of take some of the themes and group them into common elements in terms of are they giving you the same sort of signals, and very often this will sort of coalesce into 5 to 10 key categories, and then ask the team to comment on these key categories. Are there any surprises in there? Are there any new insights? Are there any areas for further discussion? What are the sort of general themes across those categories? And very often you take those categories and sort of they will form sub elements of your TMAP when you come onto it. Now, the next stage is really talking about the future. You're talking about the as-is state, and this is really what was the ideal state, and ask the team what the ideal state would look like in terms of your quality system and quality organisation, in terms of attributes. And again, very often it helps to use sticky notes to capture thoughts and ideas, and it very often it helps if you start mapping out the future state in terms of mapping it in close locality to the exercise you've just done previously, so you can simultaneously look at the current as-is state and obviously your future state. And obviously the TMAP really is an exercise in bridging those two areas, the current state to where you want to go. I really ask the team to comment on what the future state looks like. Are there any surprises? Are there any insights? Any learning points? And again, are there any common themes in terms of the TMAP? So the next stage is really defining the team map itself in terms of this really is an exercise in taking the as is state and the state you want to get to and really mapping out what are the things that need to change over time to get you to that future state. And it helps to categorize them into process, people, technology, IT, compliance. Really, it's up to the group to decide how best you bucket the various areas. And really, this area does need the sort of undivided attention of the facilitator, because the key question you're trying to ask is how do you make the journey from where you are now to that future state. So the questions you should be asking yourself as a facilitator or a quality leader are what are the capabilities and systems and processes need to be changed in order to get you to that future state, or to be put in place and implemented to get you to this future state. Are there any sequence of actions or projects that need to be completed sequentially, or things that can happen in parallel in terms of getting to the final destination? And how much investment are you going to need? What's the resource and economic cost of making these changes? And can your transformation be realistically delivered within the horizon of the time frame you're looking at in terms of 3 to 5 years? So basically, you're trying to map out the events over time. You obviously don't want everything to happen in the first year, and obviously some changes in the future have to be built on previous changes. So this is really sort of trying to map out where you're going and how you're going to get there in a bit more granularity in terms of activities. So this is an example of a T map. So basically, you've got years across the top axis, and basically you bucket it into various areas. And this one's obviously it's stratified into process, people, compliance, and technology. And basically, you map out over time where you want to move to in terms of the changes you want to make in the current year, the next year, the year after, etc. Move into this future state, and you can color code them in terms of things you've already done, things are on track, things are delayed. So basically, as you use this T map, it's in Anger. Once you've created it, you can use it as a form of tools to actually explain where you're going and what's been completed and what are the roadblocks, but also things that have been completed and you can tick off and show you're moving forward with your execution of your T map. Now, the team app is more than just a communication tool. It really should be reviewed regularly once you've got it up and running. And really, it's used to show the entire organization that you're actually progressing. And as I said, it really helps to show things that you've completed and also things that are coming up in the future. And very importantly, it needs to be a flexible tool. Even with a relatively short strategic horizon of 3 to 5 years, your team app will be impacted. You will need to change it. It's not something you should religiously adhere to. It will be very, very surprising if within the first year you don't have to revisit your team app in terms of whether it's applicable. Certain things will drop off and certain things will need to be added to your team app as you move forward. Now, the final slide really is a summary of some of the key learnings from doing a number of team app sessions. Don't underestimate the importance of it as a communication tool, not only to explain where you're going in terms of the organization going forward, but also how far you've come in terms of progression. So it's really useful to ground the organization in terms of reminding them of where you used to be in the past, in terms of some of the processes and technology that were available years ago. For instance, moving from a paper-based system to an EQMS, very often you can remind individuals, what it used to be like in the past. As you build your team app, you're going to have to look at the quality organization very holistically, and it will begin to incorporate some sort of systems thinking as you understand the interactions between various aspects of the QMS. And as you build your team app and have to sort of maintain it over time, you will begin to understand that the world is complex. Your world will change. It will be impacted by events, and your team app will have to be refreshed going forwards. And this is not a bad thing. This is not a sign of failure. This is a sign you are able to work within a complex environment. And in terms of individuals at your team app session, in terms of resistance to change, we talked a little bit and touched on it briefly earlier. In general, within organizations, there are three types of people in terms of their views on change. There's the evangelist who was really up for change and you don't have to convince them. There's the team player that will go along with the flow and contribute, but have no strong feelings either way. And very often you've got the individuals we call the doubting Thomases, where basically any change is bad and they often put up a degree of resistance during the journey. However, do not underestimate the power of the doubting Thomas, because those individuals will often tell you the truth. They'll often give you reality checks in terms of the barriers that you will face to implement your change. And very often when they see that their views are being heeded and they're being listened to, very often a doubting Thomas can turn into an evangelist. But it's very important in your TMAP session you have contributions of you have individuals from each of these groups as part of your TMAP session. You don't want a TMAP session with just everybody that's evangelists and yes men. Whenever they're always going to say yes, it's great. You want a really sort of broader representation of those different groups. Now the TMAP session and the TMAP module will actually spawn obviously projects that will be projects in their own right. They will have their own action plans and own delivery plans. They may be CAPAs within their own right. So basically your change, your TMAP is not to replace the change control procedure. It's really designed to sort of articulate the direction you're going at a very high level. And basically, you're going to still need the rigor of change control and CAPA to deliver some of the aspects of your TMAP. So that's how to build a TMAP. That's some of the tips in terms of the things that you could consider in building that TMAP. And in the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of bring it a bit all together in terms of how can you make your QMS flow in terms of its ability to better deliver to your customers in terms of what are the aspects in terms of metrics and systems you can put in place to actually make sure your quality system and quality organization in parallel with your TMAP is really sort of is working for you and flowing as well as it could be. So we'll join you in the next session.